Welcome back to another edition of the Magic Latest Podcast. We discuss everything Orlando Magic basketball. I'm your host, Jalon Dixon, and today we got a little bit of news. Nothing too crazy, but we're going to breeze through this afternoon. Hopefully some more things pick up, at least in terms of stuff going on in the offseason around the Orlando Magic that we can talk about, or some other building blocks that I can come up with as potential like series for the page until news starts to pick up. But for today, we're just going to have some quick hitters. But before we get into that, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for daily Orlando Magic content. I know the slow part of the offseason is kicking in, but guys, we are going to still be having daily content, everything Orlando Magic, so do not forget to come back tomorrow. But today, let's start off with something that I addressed a couple days ago, which was obviously the trial around Adreian Payne, a former Orlando Magic player who was gunned down many years ago, I believe back in 2022. And his trial had started a few days ago. For the updates for anybody that does care, Adreian Payne's killer was convicted, and the actual sentencing for him will be on August 29th. So that puts him in a position where the family for Adreian Payne will get the justice they deserve. Shout out to his family. Hope they're doing all well. And if, again, for anybody who did care about the situation or is following the trial, yes, our next real update will not be until late August. Next, let's move to on the court. The Orlando Magic and, ironically enough, the Memphis Grizzlies will be playing each other in Berlin and London on, I believe, January 15th and January 18th, I believe, are the two dates. Let me double check that. Yes, it will be Berlin on the 15th, and it will be London on the 18th. Yes. This is the 14th game featuring an NBA team in Germany since 1984 and the league's first regular season game in the country. The NBA London game 2026, presented by Tesla, will also be the 19th game featuring an NBA team in the UK since 1993 and the league's 10th regular season game in London. I mean, let's be real. This is the most interesting part about this, obviously, is that, Franz Wagner and Mo Wagner, as well as Tristan da Silva, all very native to the European area, right? Also, it's very notable that the Memphis Grizzlies will be essentially playing these games instead of the MLK game typically against the Atlanta Hawks. So a big change. It'll be interesting to see who they end up putting up against the Atlanta Hawks in that game, because that is usually like a pretty decent staple of the NBA season in terms of consistent, not holidays per se, but like landmarks within the season of like certain games that are played within a calendar year, right? So they're probably going to end up replacing the Memphis Grizzlies with somebody else. It'll be interesting to see who they do that with. But yes, the Memphis Grizzlies and the Orlando Magic will be playing overseas in Europe. Hopefully, those are two, homecoming ball-out games for the Wagner brothers against the Grizzlies. And considering that it's his former team, hopefully we see Desmond Bane go off as well. Just thought that was really interesting because, just another sign that even the NBA as a conglomerate is getting hip to the Orlando Magic as this team that they need to put center stage. In a year where the Eastern Conference is a little dissipated, the Orlando Magic are looking like the it kid team of the season in the East. They might even be the it kid team in the NBA, and the NBA is starting to recognize and starting to put them in position to be seen on main stages like this one, and the Wagner brothers being on the big stage in Europe like that, even bigger when it comes to globalizing the game. So, shout out to the NBA. Shout out to the NBA for this one, because you got to be real with yourself. Maybe a year or two ago, I don't know if the Orlando Magic are considered as this team that you want to feature as one of your overseas squads in terms of playing in front of a European crowd. We know John Morant is a draw, right? So him alone is a huge draw for that kind of thing. But the Orlando Magic a season or two ago, maybe the NBA might not have considered them, but now, with them being one of these rising teams, one of these rising young squads in the league, Hey, I'm sure that's not all that it has to do with it when it comes to scheduling them for this, but I'm sure it has a lot to do with it, at least in terms of building them up as a team that people are going to want to watch this upcoming season. Let's move on to Dwight Howard, who had some interesting comments about Victor Wembanyama when he stepped on the KG Certified podcast with Kevin Garnett, where he says, "There's no way I'm not dunking on everybody until someone stops me. I'm 7'5". Who is gonna stop me?" He said he was talking about if he were Victor Wembanyama. Imagine if he put all that energy towards going to the basket every single play. Who's going to stop him? Now you're getting teams in foul trouble. Now you can play your finesse game. Howard was vocal about what his dislike for the amount of threes Wemby takes. The Spurs big man averaged 8.83 threes last season. Dwight Howard said, "After you've already beaten them up for 2 quarters, they're at your mercy. But you don't come into the game. But you don't come into the game saying I'm shooting threes." Um, I gotta be honest with you. I feel like let me read the very last quote that he says. Howard closes thoughts on Wemby and the newer, fast-paced style of basketball with an impactful closing statement. "Now the floor is so spread out, people don't want to leave shooters. It's a mix. It's like a bad brand of basketball, but it's something we've never seen because we got everybody trying to be Golden State in them. But you don't have the greatest shooter on your team." This is Dwight Howard being a little disingenuous. I think that although Dwight Howard was a supreme force physically, Dwight Howard was not a legitimate 7'5" guy, right? Obviously. Dwight Howard is like 6'10". So not even a legitimate 7-footer. Forceful finisher, but he comes from a different era, right? The ability to stretch the floor. Victor Wembanyama, don't get me wrong, 8.83 points, 3-point attempts per game is a lot for his size. I do think one of the biggest things for Victor Wembanyama is that he doesn't rim roll enough. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that he had just under 4 rim dive attempts per game last season. I think it was like 3.4 pick and roll rim dives where he actually rolls to the basket and goes for an attempt. For reference here, I believe that Anthony Davis was around like 5.5. So not an insane difference, but for somebody that is Victor Wembanyama's size, to be under 4 is actually significantly worrisome for a player like that, right? You have to think about some of these rim running centers we've become very accustomed to over like history, and think about how Victor Wembanyama can embrace those roles. Think about DeAndre Jordan. I think about Clint Capella with Houston the first time, not this time now, right? Where they were able to dominate their way into 12, 14 points a night and be high-level rim defenders just simply off of pick and roll actions. Now you can make the claim that Victor Wembanyama does not have a elite level passer the way DeAndre Jordan had with Chris Paul, the way Clint Capella had with James Harden, right? You can make that claim, and that's a fair claim. But I also think that Victor Wembanyama does not play to his size enough, given the fact that he is so physically imposing from a height perspective. But I also think that the game has embraced guys from the big man position to be able to shoot the ball. It's not just a Steph Curry spread the floor thing with Golden State. Not everybody is trying to play the same. And I think this is another representation of where media analysts are kind of getting things misunderstood when you come from this perspective, is not everybody is playing the same. The Celtics don't play the same as Golden State. Golden State doesn't play the same way the Miami Heat do. The Indiana Pacers and Oklahoma City Thunder play completely different styles. Everybody is playing different styles that meet in the middle, but archetypes are built within the league, and archetypes determine payroll. Archetypes determine your ability to make a lucrative amount of money within this league. Otto Porter made over $100 million off of one season where he shot 40+% from beyond the arc. because he was able to archetype himself into a knockdown three-point shooting specialist, right? Same thing with Duncan Robinson. Duncan Robinson earned $80+ million as a specialist at the three-point shooting position. Miles Turner was able to earn $100 million from the Milwaukee Bucks because he's a stretch five. Karl Anthony Towns was deemed as a max player by the Minnesota Timberwolves and traded for by the New York Knicks to be a stretch five. Kristaps Porzingis was traded for by the Atlanta Hawks to be a stretch five. And before that, the Boston Celtics to be a stretch five. Brook Lopez was acquired by the LA Clippers to give them a different look from what they get from a Ivica Zubac, who's primarily a back-to-the-basket player, and get a guy like Brook Lopez who could stretch the floor. It takes 4.5 to 5.5 three-point attempts per game to help stretch the floor. Although Victor Wembanyama is doing it more, he also is tasked with operating an offense much more than all of the guys that I named. And he's taking 2 or 3 more three-point attempts than that. But the archetype, especially in these early stages of his career, exploring the studio space and truly getting an understanding of what his range is, the archetype of being a stretch big with also that kind of height makes it where if he can be a proficient three-point shooter, another guy that comes to mind is Luke Cornett, who is above 7 foot. If he can be a proficient three-point shooter, paired with the fact that he is 7'5", now you have to respect both areas. Now you have to respect both areas rather than just simply saying, oh, we're going to run him off the line and make him a driver or force him to be a passer. So my thoughts on this really in tandem with what I was saying earlier is I think Dwight Howard has a point, but I think Dwight Howard also gets his point lost when he then when he then ends his statement by saying everybody's trying to play with like the 2016 Golden State Warriors. That is not at all what this is. Victor Wembanyama, honestly, I don't think would have thrived in Golden State's system trying to be a knockdown three-point shooter. Golden State never had a legit floor spacing big in that time frame. And the only time they did was DeMarcus Cousins, and he barely played for them because due to injury, right? So if the philosophy is just, oh, everybody wants to play like Golden State because there's a million threes going up, sure, there's more three-pointers going up back compared to back when you were playing, significantly so. But the idea of these teams trying to play like one another, highly inaccurate. Victor Wembanyama, if anything, may be trying to emulate players like Kevin Durant. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that when you think about a dominating force like his, because I don't think we would call him all that dominant in today's league if he was just a rim running center. I just think that he could thrive more efficiently if he ran to the rim more often. So, Dwight Howard, interesting thoughts. You guys give your comments down below on your thoughts on what Dwight Howard said, not only about Victor Wembanyama, particularly because obviously this is an Orlando Magic podcast. So, I mean, you can share your thoughts on Victor Wembanyama, but what are your thoughts on his thoughts that everybody is trying to play like the 2016 Golden State Warriors? I feel like that's just kind of a little bit of naivety and a lack of, watching real games nowadays. Because I feel like if you watch the games, the NBA playoffs particularly were a very good indication that all these teams are unique in their own way. And although there's more three-pointers being taken, sure, that's one thing that is kind of a big boom across the entire NBA. But the way in which offense and defense is conducted in today's league is way different than anything that the Golden State Warriors were doing. And it's true, not every team has a Steph Curry type or anywhere in the ballpark of Steph Curry as an offensive generator, both as a point guard in general, but definitely as a three-point shooter. And I think every team kind of notices that in their own way, which is why you have teams like Indiana who operate as a much faster team than what Golden State was back in 2016. Or you have a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder who rely much more on the mid-range acumen of guys like Jalen Williams and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Like, there's a lot of differences in some of these offenses, and I feel like just the 3-point number boom is the thing that's taking over the narrative. But that's just me. Lastly, we're going to finish on some reporting that Paolo Banchero actually told the Orlando Magic exactly what he wanted at the end of the season, and it looks like he got it. NBA insider Mark Spears said that Paolo Banchero, okay, let's see. He said, I'm going to give Jeff Weltman some love for the with the Orlando Magic. I think he is deserving of an A. Making that trade for Desmond Bane in Orlando is known for being quiet. That was something I wasn't expecting. That was aggressive. Paolo Banchero basically after the season told management, we need some shooting, we need some depth, and we need some guards. And they did that. I'm not going to bluff. To a T here. Paolo Banchero for GM. I'm just kidding. But here's what Banchero said in his exit interviews. He said, me and Jeff, we've talked before. I think he's asked me my opinion on certain things, but at the same time, I will let him do his job. My job is to play. My job is to show up every day and work. I try not to get too involved in what he does. We always want to know then Jeff Weltman says, we always want to know what our players are thinking and read the room right, and have our finger on the pulse of the team. I won't get into more private behind closed door conversations with our players. Obviously, their impact on our team is felt in a lot of different ways. We pride ourselves in understanding the temperature of our team and what the pulse of our team is. They're locked in. Jeff Weltman and Paolo Banchero locked in. And you got to think, there's not too many superstar GM relationships that are lockstep like this from a team building perspective. And the best relationships are the ones where the championships are made. I think a perfect one that you can use an example of is the Oklahoma City Thunder this past season. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander 4 to 5 years ago said that when he signed his 5-year extension, said, I'm going to trust the process. He said, I'm going to trust the process of what they've got going on. And here we are now, after trusting their GM, they have 1 million draft picks. They're built to go on a dynastic run, or at least built to be in the mix for the top of the Western Conference every single year, for the foreseeable future. And it's because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander put trust in the front office, and the front office has that equal, if not more, mutual respect for him. They built around him. They heard him. They heard his patience, right? Because sometimes your actions speak even louder than your words do. And I think Paolo Banchero takes a very similar approach, despite the fact that he did have some suggestions. I do think that he has approached this in a way that says, I'm going to let you guys do your job. I just want y'all to build around me, right? Jeff Weltman did it. We need guards, we need shooting, we need depth. They built out the guard spot significantly. By adding size with Noah Penda, you have more wing depth added to Tristan da Silva and Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, right? You've positioned yourself with real veteran leadership by adding Tyus Jones to the fray, a guy who's been known to be a steady hand on teams that have been solid throughout the years. And he played in the Western Conference majority of his time frame. So this is a guy that in the Eastern Conference I think is going to be a lot more comfortable. Shout out Jeff Weltman, man. Shout out Paolo Banchero for voicing your opinion. But shout out Jeff Weltman for hearing his player, hearing his all-star, hearing his MVP caliber player, and saying, you know what, bro? You are a good enough player to build around, and we're going to give you exactly what we need in whatever capacity that is. And that includes going over the first apron to make it happen. And now this is going to be one of the most highly regarded teams coming out of the Eastern Conference, and a team that a lot of eyeballs are going to be on at the tip-off of the season, because a lot of people are going to want to see exactly what's going on over in Orlando. But with that being the case, guys, remember to leave your comments down in the comment section about how you guys feel about what Jeff Weltman has done in terms of building around Paolo Banchero, your thoughts around the development of the game over the last couple of years. As Dwight Howard said, it seems like the more three-point centric universe of the NBA is taking over in a way that's hurting the game. I don't necessarily think it's that straightforward. I don't think it's that black and white. Drop all your thoughts down in the comment section down below. I will be picking through those because honestly, some of your comments might be featured in tomorrow's episode just to give me some real content to build off of, and also just to kind of engage with you guys and learn more about what you guys' thoughts are around the Orlando Magic and based off of like how you guys feel about where the league is heading as a whole. But with that being said, I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.